August 28th, 1944. Somewhere over Germany at 20,000 feet, an American P-47 Thunderbolt pilot's voice crackled over the radio with words that would send shockwaves through every Allied airbase in Europe. "What the hell was that? Did you see it?" "Jesus Christ, it had no propeller," his wingman responded, voice tight with confusion. "I saw something. Silver. Moving like nothing I've ever seen. It's impossible." But it wasn't impossible, it was real. And in that moment, American pilots came face to face with a weapon that seemed torn from science fiction. Nazi Germany is Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. This is the story of how American airmen encountered technology from the future, how they reacted to an enemy they couldn't outrun or outfight, and how they found a way to survive against impossible odds. Because on that clear summer day in 1944, everything changed. Lieutenant Joseph Miller was leading a flight of 4 P-47 Thunderbolts, escorting a formation of B-17 flying fortresses returning from a bombing raid. The mission had been routine, heavy flak over the target, a few Focke-Wulf 190s that scattered when the American fighters engaged. Nothing unusual for August 1944. The Allied air forces owned the skies by then, or so they thought. Miller later described what happened next in his mission debriefing, and his words were classified immediately. "I saw what looked like a silver streak pass our formation at incredible speed. At first, I thought it was a V-1 buzz bomb that had gone off course, but then it banked, it turned, and that's when I realized it was a manned aircraft. There was no propeller," he continued, his voice still carrying disbelief even hours after landing. "No sound of a piston engine, just this whoosh like wind, but fast, faster than anything I'd ever seen fly." 4 other pilots confirmed the sighting. Intelligence officers initially dismissed it as combat fatigue or misidentification, but then the reports kept coming in. Different squadrons, different sectors, all describing the same thing. A silver aircraft with no visible propeller, moving at speeds that defied belief. Then came the attacks. On August 28th, that same silver aircraft returned. This time, it wasn't just passing by. A B-17 formation from the 401st Bomb Group watched as something dove on them from above at tremendous speed. Technical Sergeant Robert Hayes, a waist gunner on Memphis Belle II, survived the encounter. His account is chilling. "I was scanning for fighters when I saw it coming. At first, I thought it was one of ours. The speed, the profile, everything was wrong for a German plane. Then I saw the crosses on the wings. I tried to swing my gun around, tried to get a bead on it, but it was moving so fast, by the time I tracked it, it had already fired and zoomed past. The fort next to us, lucky strike, just exploded. 1 second it was there, next second it was falling in pieces. The whole attack took maybe 3 seconds. Then it was gone, already climbing back up. We couldn't even return fire effectively. It was like trying to shoot a bullet with another bullet." That day, American airmen learned a terrifying truth. They were no longer flying the best aircraft in the sky. In the days and weeks that followed, Allied intelligence worked frantically to piece together information about this new threat. Reconnaissance photos, pilot debriefings, interrogations of captured Luftwaffe personnel, and even fragments from crashed aircraft all contributed to a terrifying picture. The aircraft was designated Messerschmitt Me-262 Schwalbe, Swallow in German. It was powered by 2 Junkers Jumo 004 turbojet engines, each producing 1,180 pounds of thrust. Top speed, 540 miles per hour in level flight. By comparison, the fastest Allied fighter, the P-51 Mustang, could manage about 440 miles per hour at best. But speed wasn't the only advantage. The Me-262 carried 4 30mm Mk-108 cannons in its nose. These weren't the rifle-caliber machine guns Allied fighters used. These were cannons. A single hit from a 30mm shell could tear the wing off a bomber or blow a fighter apart. Major Walter Nowotny, a German ace with 258 kills, was given command of the first operational Me-262 unit, Commando Nowotny. His pilots were the elite of the elite, chosen for their skill and experience, and they were given the most advanced aircraft in the world. American bomber crews began calling the Me-262 the Silver Bullet, something you couldn't see coming, couldn't fight, could only pray missed you. The psychological impact was immediate and severe. Captain James Howard, a Medal of Honor recipient and experienced fighter pilot, wrote in his diary, "We've gone from hunters to hunted. Every mission now, the boys are looking over their shoulders, waiting for that silver streak. It's changed the whole dynamic up there. The confidence is gone." Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, a B-17 ball turret gunner, was even more blunt in a letter home that was intercepted by sensors. "Ma, we're not fighting the same war anymore. They've got something up there that we can't touch. I've seen 5 forts go down to these jets in the last 2 weeks. I don't know how much longer our luck will hold." Allied command knew they had a crisis. If Germany could produce these jets in large numbers, the entire strategic bombing campaign, the campaign that was supposed to cripple Germany's war industry, could collapse. Something had to be done. Fast. But American pilots weren't the type to give up. They'd faced tough odds before. They'd adapted, improvised, overcome. This would be no different. The breakthrough came from observation and intelligence. While the Me-262 was revolutionary in the air, it had critical vulnerabilities on the ground. First, those advanced jet engines were temperamental. They required extensive maintenance, had a service life of just 10-25 hours before needing replacement, and failed frequently. Engine fires and flameouts were common. Second, and most importantly, the Me-262 needed long, prepared runways. It couldn't operate from grass fields or short strips like piston engine fighters. It needed specific air bases that Allied reconnaissance had identified. Third, jet engines of that era burned fuel at an alarming rate, and Me-262 could only stay airborne for about 60-90 minutes, depending on combat conditions. That meant pilots had to land at predictable locations at predictable times. The solution was simple but dangerous. Go to where the jets had to be and catch them when they were vulnerable. Operation Chattanooga Choo Choo was born, the unofficial name American fighter pilots gave to airfield strafing missions targeting Me-262 bases. The official orders were more diplomatic, but every pilot knew what they meant. Find those airfields and wait. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke, commanding the 479th Fighter Group, briefed his pilots. "Gentlemen, we can't catch these jets in the air. We've tried. It doesn't work. So we're going to catch them on the ground or during takeoff and landing when they're slow. Find their nests and make them pay." The tactics were refined quickly. Flights of 4 fighters would position themselves near known Me-262 air bases, hiding in clouds or staying low behind hills and trees. They'd watch the approach patterns, wait, and when a jet came in to land, gear down, flaps extended, speed reduced. That's when they'd strike. It was dangerous work. German airfields were heavily defended with anti-aircraft guns. And if you were caught low and slow near an enemy airfield, you were an easy target. But it worked. On October 7, 1944, Major Joseph Myers of the 78th Fighter Group, flying a P-47 Thunderbolt, spotted an Me-262 on final approach to an airfield near Acma. The jet was low, slow, committed to landing. Myers dove from his hiding position at 6,000 feet, pushed his Thunderbolt to maximum speed, and opened fire from 400 yards. His .50 caliber rounds stitched across the Me-262's fuselage and left engine. The jet lurched, tried to go around, but the damaged engine caught fire. It crashed in a field short of the runway. Major Myers became the first American pilot credited with destroying a Me-262 in air-to-air combat, even though technically the jet was landing. The floodgates opened. As more American fighters adopted these tactics, Me-262 losses mounted. Lieutenant Urban Drew of the 361st Fighter Group achieved what many thought impossible. He shot down 2 Me-262s in a single day, October 1944. Both were caught during vulnerable moments near their airfield. Drew's gun camera footage became required viewing for all Allied fighter pilots. Then there was Lieutenant Chuck Yeager. Yes, the same Chuck Yeager who would later break the sound barrier. On November 6, 1944, Yeager spotted a Me-262 taxiing for takeoff. He attacked at low altitude, strafing the jet before it could get airborne. The Me-262 exploded on the runway. German jet pilots now faced a terrible dilemma. Every takeoff was a gauntlet. Every landing was a potential death sentence. American fighters prowled near their bases constantly, waiting like wolves for the moment of vulnerability. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, a Luftwaffe ace who flew the Me-262, later wrote, "We had the superior aircraft, but we were like lions in a cage. We could only hunt when we had fuel, and we could only land at specific places." The Americans knew this. They exploited it ruthlessly. The tables had turned. The hunters had become the hunted. But here's the question that haunts historians to this day. What if Adolf Hitler hadn't insisted the Me-262 be developed as a bomber first, delaying fighter production by crucial months? What if Germany had deployed these jets in early 1944 instead of late 1944? What if they'd had the resources to produce thousands instead of hundreds? The numbers are sobering. Germany produced approximately 1,400 Me-262s during the war. Only about 200 to 300 were operational at any given time due to maintenance issues, fuel shortages, and pilot availability. Yet even with these limited numbers, Me-262s are credited with destroying over 500 Allied aircraft. 500. Despite being outnumbered hundreds to one, despite fuel shortages, despite being hunted at their own air bases, they still managed to inflict significant casualties. General Karl Tui Spaatz, commanding U.S. strategic air forces in Europe, privately admitted in a classified memo, "If the Germans had possessed 300 operational Me-262s 6 months earlier, our daylight bombing campaign would have been severely compromised, possibly untenable. But Germany didn't have them earlier. By the time Me-262s entered service in meaningful numbers, Germany's industrial base was crumbling under Allied bombing. Synthetic fuel plants were destroyed, factories were rubble, trained pilots were scarce. The technological miracle came too late. American and British forces made capturing Me-262 technology a top priority. When Allied troops overran German airfields in early 1945, teams of engineers and pilots descended on captured jets. They were studied, photographed, tested, and reverse-engineered. Everything learned from the Me-262 fed directly into Allied jet programs. The British Gloucester Meteor benefited from captured German research. The American F-86 Sabre, which would dominate Korean war skies, incorporated lessons learned from facing the Me-262. The jet age had arrived, and it arrived through combat. On May 8, 1945, when Germany surrendered, the last Me-262s were grounded. Some were scuttled by their own pilots, others were captured intact. A few were flown by American test pilots, who marveled at the technology they'd once feared. The American pilots who first encountered these jets in August 1944 had faced something unprecedented, an enemy with a clear technological advantage. In any other circumstance, that should have meant disaster, but they survived, they adapted, they found weaknesses in a seemingly perfect weapon. They turned the hunter into the hunted, that silver streak that terrified bomber crews and fighter pilots alike became a symbol not of German superiority, but of American resilience. When faced with the impossible, they made it possible. The Me-262 changed aerial warfare forever. It proved that jet propulsion was the future. It demonstrated that speed and firepower could overcome numbers. But it also proved that technology alone doesn't win wars. Strategy wins wars. Logistics wins wars. Adaptability wins wars. And in all those areas, the Allies had the advantage. Today, every fighter jet that screams across the sky owes something to the Me-262. But every pilot who flies those jets owes something to the American airmen of 1944, the ones who saw the future coming at 540 miles per hour and didn't blink. They stood their ground. They found a way, and they won. That's the story of America's first encounter with the jet age. Not just a story of technology, but a story of courage, adaptation, and determination in the face of the impossible.